And all right, we are live on YouTube. Hello, friends. Daniel, I see that message and I had to make it go live. And I'm going to click go live here on Instagram too, which is janky that I had to hit two different buttons, but there we go. Hello, my friends. Thank you for joining me. I'm Nicholas W. Fuller, and this is Person Behind the Pages, the show where we get to know the creators that make the things we love. Tonight, I'm finally joined by Tatiana Obey, and which entirely me pushing it back over and over, and Tatiana had been super gracious and whatnot, but Daniel Coolball, host of the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast, saying, Tatiana, I'm so excited for this chat, and he's echoing my sentiments, and everyone else, thanks for being here. Tatiana, I'm excited.
I'm so excited to be here too. I feel like we were just building momentum to this moment. And
right.
Great to be
here. We were just talking, just for a minute before we hit that live button, about how amazing it must be to have created Star Wars or something that's like that kind of level of cultural penetration. So soon, what I'm saying is, someday there's got to be a Sistah Samurai Day. What do you think?
I hope so. I'm wearing my shirt today, so hopefully.
Oh, that is sick. I like that. It's just the text, yeah?
Yeah, it's just the text. I have another one where she's on there, but that's somewhere else.
Love it. I haven't ever. That's neat. I genuinely didn't know I could pull in a comment from Twitter that way. Thanks, Scott.
Oh, that's cool.
Scott, right? Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the happy birthday. Scott out there, his Memory of Song just came out last week, and the dude has sold a bunch and then did a free promo for 2 days and given away 4,000 books. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's great. I'm so sorry to hear what happened to it, because I'm pretty sure I was one of the ones that pre-ordered it and lost the pre-order. And I was like, wait a minute, I think I'm supposed to get that book.
You're gonna give Scott PTSD. It's okay, Scott. It's okay. No, he's been killing it, and he recovered very well from that.
Yeah.
Bo, what's up? Yeah.
Hey, Bo.
Building.
He made this happen. Bo made this happen, by the way, I think.
Yeah, nice. Bo's brought me a couple gifts. Bo's a man. And this is very random, Tatiana. Are you planning on going to DragonCon at all?
No.
All right. Is that all right? This is the first year I'm gonna go, so I'm just talking to every writer. I don't be like, yo, you going? Because I want to meet some. I've always heard that the Westin Bar, the bar of the Westin Hotel is just the place where indie authors hang out at DragonCon, and I'm like, that seems like a great time. I want to get in on that.
I mean, it looks like a great time to me. I want to go one day too. I haven't gone before.
That was my birthday gift from my wife. She's like, here's your tickets. Go have fun. I was like, ah!
That's such an awesome birthday gift.
right. Yep. All right. So Tatiana, so much to discuss. I mean, I love that you made that post a little bit ago of how you're in the black now with Sistah Samurai, which is
yes.
Right?
Yes, and I also just hit another milestone this week. I finally broke even on my very first book, Bones to the Wind, this week. I'm like, oh my gosh, 2 years later, I did it.
Takes a minute. Well,
sometimes it does.
Sistah Samurai, though, I mean, one, I know who did your cover, and he don't come cheap, right? And he's got such a waiting list too. You must have had that idea. I mean, there must have been, developed you worked this novella at trad pub speed. I bet,
Yeah, and. Yeah, the cover artist is Feliz Ortiz, and correct, he does not come cheap, and he has quite the calendar.
Right.
I remember it was after the Daniel show with the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast when I first interviewed with him, and we were talking about Feliz Ortiz and his covers, and that inspired me to go, you know what? Let me just reach out and just maybe it'll happen. And he was like, yeah, he was excited about the idea, and I think that was back in December. And it wasn't until the next year of August I got the cover. So that's how long it took. I'm like, I'm just going to wait patiently. I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to get my cover.
Yeah. Dude, I reached out to him not that long ago. And now he's his next opening is late 2025.
Yeah. Yeah. The moment after I did the first
Yeah.
Samurai cover, I was like, okay, go ahead and put me on the calendar for number 2.
Right.
I don't know if it's going to happen, but just go ahead and do it.
Yeah. So did you at that when words are hard. When you reached out to him to begin with, did you already have the book already done, or what was it at? What stage was it at?
It was when I reached out, it was not done yet. By the time we started working on the cover, it was fully done.
Yeah.
All
You had
the
a bunch of
drafts
time to get it done. Yeah.
finally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I planned that well.
Yeah. That's cool. All right, so I want to talk about Sistah Samurai a fair bit. I'm like a third into it, and I think your writing is masterful. Just like I love the way that you're bringing in so much, and the character voice is so good. I want to get in a lot of that, but first, we're gonna talk a little bit about different. You're an award nominated. I want to talk about some of your other stuff. I want to talk about like working with Felix. I definitely want to get into talking about open world RPGs because I'm a nerd and that sounds fun. But I want to start with a little bit about you as a person. So I feel that you have had a couple interesting jobs. I'm gonna share this list that you sent me. So I always I think it's interesting the jobs that especially indie authors have, because like unless you're Brandon Sanderson, you just worked at that hotel for a little bit while you're writing books. Like everyone's got like a journey, everyone's got a journey. So you were an intern at an international rescue committee. You did financial accounting assistant, a receptionist, marketing specialist, IT specialist, positioning specialist, meaning like a book mentor for nonfiction writers, and also an English teacher in South Korea.
Yes.
But like you've done some stuff. Okay. So this international rescue committee I find fascinating. Were you rescuing people?
So it is a nonprofit, and it was the job that I kind of like landed right after college.
Okay.
And what it is, it's a nonprofit that helps relocate refugees here to America, and they have different branches in different cities. So when refugees come, certain cities have different quotas on how many they can accept. Those quotas change over time depending on who is in office. But when they come, they need a lot of help, they need a lot of assistance, they need a lot of services, because a lot of times you don't know the language. A lot of times they might not have family. They do try to relocate people where there might be family in the area or in the vicinity. But to just help them adjust here in America after many times like a traumatic experiences.
That's fascinating. But it's interesting too. You said that the quota changes depending on who's in office. My father was an environmental control and life support system engineer for the space shuttle. I've mentioned that on different streams before. But it's he worked for a contractor, but of course he worked for Boeing, but they were working on the shuttle, so they sort of worked for NASA. Anyway, all this to say, so it can be maddening the way stuff changes every like 4 years, 8 years, and because everyone's just got their own complete idea. Like I'm sure this is I'm sure there's some ways that this is the same with refugees. Like I imagine the different services that they offer is like different, but with the space, like they just have such complete different ideas, especially post shuttle. But so that must have been fun.
Yeah. It was really interesting. Definitely got the chance to meet a lot of different people.
Oh, that's neat. Did you? Yeah, okay. Was it like different people that you were working with, or the refugees, or both?
With both.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Anyone like particular sort of stand out in terms of like where they came from and their story?
Not particularly at the time, because of what was going on at the time. We had a lot of Afghani refugees and also a lot of Sudan refugees from Congo. So at the time, that's where we were getting a lot of refugees from.
Man, I can't remember. I think it was João. Yeah, it was João. I was speaking with him. We were talking about the history of Portugal, and I'm like, the history is fascinating, but also bleak. And yeah, we're so good at like war and making people move and shit. Yay! But hey, I mean, on the other side, people like you helping people out, so that's cool. Tell me, could you? I want to hear about English teacher in South Korea. I really want to visit South Korea, so you got to tell me all the nerd stuff. I'm sure you nerded out quite a bit because, yeah. But before that, positioning specialist, you were a book mentor for nonfiction writers. Like, I'm just curious, like, what was that job like? Were you working directly for the publisher, or were you sort of freelancing, or what?
Yeah, so I was a contract worker with a publisher, and it was a small press. And what they did is the authors wrote their books, but a lot of the times these were nonfiction authors, so they were very specialized in their field. So, for example, lawyers or doctors, and who wanted to write a book that they could showcase while they went on events and they talk, the different events and talks, and because they spoke a lot and they wanted to have a book. So a lot of times they're not writers. They're very, very, very smart in what they do, but they aren't writers. And so my job was to kind of coach them and see what made this book special, what made their point of view and what they had to say special, and to help them write that book.
So what, like, where did you get to the level of you were doing some ghostwriting, or was it like kind of tapered, not to that degree,
No, it was not to that degree. They wrote everything. They just it was very, I guess you can say, like, developmental editing.
They wrote stuff and you're like, okay, let's actually build a narrative here, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly, yeah.
That makes sense. That actually seems kind of cool.
Yeah, it was really fun. It's really fun. I'm not there anymore, but I did have a good time.
And so English teacher in South Korea. That sounds, I mean, there have been times I've looked at that and I've been like, but especially now with the kids and stuff, like, that ain't happening. But when did you do that, and how long did you do that, and how much did you like it, and how much good Korean food did you eat, and did you ever see StarCraft 2 in person or other esports? And tell me other things.
So it was definitely like right after I interned with the IRC, I got the English teacher job, and I was looking at teaching English in Japan, but the ropes you have to go through. So the process is to get the visa and to get approved is much longer than for Korea. And so I decided to go to Korea because I specialized in international studies in college, and my area of studies was Asia. So, I've always lived, gone over there and lived there. So I was not stationed, but I was teaching in Ulsan, and it's like a 40-minute bus ride from Busan. So, like, at the bottom of the Korean peninsula. And it was a good time. I ate so much food. I did go to some PC bongs, but at least at the time when I was there, because Korea does change things up very fast. Very much like Japan. Like, you leave for like 3 years and you come back and things have changed. But you had to have like a residential or ID card to play in the PC bongs in Korea. So it was a little bit difficult to do that. But I enjoyed my time there. And I enjoy teaching. Like, oh, the poor kiddos cried when I finally left. But I think one of the reasons why I decided to leave is because teaching is a very taxing job, and I think because I'm an introvert, it took up a lot of energy, and I didn't have a lot of energy to write, and I still definitely wanted to be able to do that on the side. It's just definitely still my passion. And it was also much colder than I thought it was going to be coming from
Yeah.
Like, it's very, one of the things that shocked me was the seasons are very distinct. Like, once it's winter, it's winter, and once it's summer. Whereas in Texas, you might have winter and you might have like, oh yeah, a week of cold, and then there's like 1, 2, or 3 days of sunshine. There's some more cold, and then like it breaks apart. So you have that reprieve and that relief. And so I was like, oh man, this is hard.
You're right.
But I enjoyed my time there.
That's funny. I grew up in Southern California, and then when I was 16, my father, working with the shuttle stuff, he had been working for Rockwell, and then they got bought by Boeing, and Boeing said, you all are either moving to Texas with the Johnson Space Center or Florida with the Kennedy Space Center. My dad said, don't hold this against him, but he said, I don't really like Texas, so we're going to Florida. But yeah, so I spent like most of my life in those two places. Now I live in North Carolina on the coast, and there's actually seasons here, and it's very strange. I don't know, like, what are these season things?
Yeah.
It snowed at my house once, like only briefly, like long enough for my Floridian wife to go outside and be like, in the powder, and then that was like it, and then it melted like by the afternoon. But
yeah, I think that's definitely one of the things that kind of like stayed with me, especially because I did study abroad in Japan for a brief time, and then living in Korea, which is how distinctive the seasons were. And I think that was also an inspiration for Sistah Samurai, was just like really capturing that.
yeah, nice. Tim says, "Come to Canada. We have distinct seasons." And listen, I've seen Ice Road Trucker. I'm not sure I'm going to come there at the winter.
I've spent some time in Canada, so like my debut year, I'd like quit my job and was like, I'm gonna go travel the world for a year because after the pandemic, so I was like, I'm gonna do that. And so I was in Canada for 2 months, and I was in Toronto and Calgary, and I really, really enjoyed Calgary. It's very beautiful, but in the wintertime there is no sun whatsoever, and I don't know how that will agree with me.
Right. Nice. So briefly, I want to say, if you're just joining us, we keep getting more and more viewers. Thanks for hanging out. If you guys want to throw Tatiana and me, I know a lot of you are on Twitter, so if you want to throw a retweet, that's going to help us like get out to more folks. If you're on YouTube, you want to give me that like and subscribe. I appreciate that. Chapter bookstores? Tell me more. What are we talking about? Are we talking about?
I don't know.
Yep. We have skating and snowboarding in Maple Taffy and Beaver Tails. Oh, well, I mean, you had me at Maple Taffy. Actually, no, you need to how is the tourism board of Canada not like promoting poutine to every single American? That's how you get people to come. Oh, chapters are Barnes and Noble. Got it. Okay, that makes sense. I thought like Indigo was the name of, or is Indigo just different, or is it in a different region? South Dakota sometime. First round is on me. I mean, we'll have a lot of rounds because I think that'll be all there will be to do, right?
So definitely.
Yeah, right. All right. So that's pretty amazing. Yeah, the teaching in South Korea. Did you try to get at the PC bangs, but kind of didn't have the thing? Did you watch any? Because I know that esports is huge in South Korea. Did you watch any esports while you were there? Or?
No, I didn't get the chance to go to any esports. I did go to a few K-pop concerts, but I did not were able to go to an esports.
That's kind of sick. What is their? Gosh, I can't remember the name. What's the big band that just broke up because of doing military service? BTS. Yeah. Some of their English songs, I'm like, oh, this is I like this. I dig it. Did you see them, or was it other ones?
It was. I saw Big Bang, which is funny because I grew up with them, and at the time I was there in Korea, their last album dropped, so it was like playing everywhere, and I was like, oh, this is great. And it's really hard to see K-pop artists in Korea. Like I had to get my co-teacher, like kind of very similar here, where you have to like wait in line and like try and get the tickets and stuff. It's very, very intense.
That's. I did another interview with this wonderful woman from Right Hive named Siri. I think you're in. Yeah, I know you're part of Right Hive. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm a panelist in the upcoming Right Hive conference.
It's gonna be this weekend. If you guys aren't checking out Right Hive, go and when we're done, not right now, but no, like go check out Right Hive. RightHiveCon.org, I think, is the website. Anyway, that's gonna be cool this weekend. Lots of cool chats. I'm sorry, Bo. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I was saying that yes, Siri did another interview where I talked with Siri, and she was getting tickets way back when for One Direction with their first time that they came to the US, and she had a whole story, and it was fun. So you guys should check out that interview too. That's really interesting though, that Chapters and Indigo, they just change names just to be confusing. All right.
It's okay. If it's historic books, I'll go in it no matter what it's called.
All right, there you go. Yeah, speaking of, I mean, you've been nominated and won some Right Hive awards, didn't you? Right?
I not aware of this, and
Finalists?
that is
No,
going to
no, all
be
right. 2023 Indie Ink Award finalists. Aren't the Indie Ink Awards from Right Hive? Or am I mistaken?
yes. I
Yeah.
am a finalist. I honestly do not know when the winners will be announced.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I don't know either. Yeah, but
Okay, Nicholas.
no. I can no. Indie Fantasy Fun. Oh, you got the Indie Fantasy Fun. That's pretty cool.
Yes, it was. I got the kind of like the service grant, so
Yeah.
I was able to work with Virginia McLean. She was going to do my cover art or cover design for Sistah Samurai. It was very funny because when I got with her, I was like, well, I already kind of have an idea of what I want to do, and I'm already pretty proficient in Photoshop, and so she's just so amazing because what she ended up doing, she was like, you know what? Yeah, you don't seem that you need my help. How about we do like a workshop? And I was like, that is so awesome. So she gave me like a hour workshop as part of the service grant. And honestly, like I picked up some really cool tips and tricks from her, and it was just so sweet what she did.
That's rad. That's super cool. So let me see. Let's dive in and talk about Afro Samurai. We'll play around with open world RPGs later and that sort of thing. But yeah, I know you got the book right there. Let's show off that beautiful cover. Ooh, So like when again, Felix Ortiz did that fantastic cover. Did you like, okay, this is exactly what I want, and he executed it, or was it like some back and forth between the two? How did that beautiful cover come to be?
Like I do think it was just like one of those perfect match type of things. When I initially messaged him, I told him my idea. I was like, oh, this is an homage to Afro Samurai. I saw quite a few of his pieces already on his portfolio, but specifically his samurai pieces. And, I felt confident that, okay, he knows Japanese clothing. I can trust him on that. And he heard Afro Samurai. He knew exactly what it was. And I was like, oh, yay, and he was excited about it. So by the time we started working on the cover, I definitely had an idea in mind. I wanted it to be black and white. I wanted pops of pink. I wanted her standing under a cherry blossom. I wanted a mountain on the back. And I wanted her posing like a badass on the cover, like some grace and poise and just the awesome badass that she is. And he was like, okay.
Got it.
Delivered. And
yeah,
it was just so awesome.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Whose idea was it? Your idea, or either the other woman that did the workshop, or was it Felix's idea to put your like the author name vertical sort of in? I think that's like kind of in a Japanese style, right?
Yeah. It's funny because the cover was technically late. So because it was late, he was very kind enough to throw in the title for me. And so he was going back and forth with the name, and I was like, "Oh, don't worry, I got it. I have an idea for it." So he let me have it. And yeah, like this was my idea. And Virginia, she helped me do my last name stamp at the bottom, so it's really nice.
That's so cool. Yeah. That's pretty neat. I mean, it's such a interesting, unique cover, but you get the vibe like right away, which is that's what you want out of a cover,
Yeah. And it was exactly how I envisioned it. And I was like, yeah.
Right. About Indie Fantasy Fun is such an amazing opportunity that's still relatively unknown to a lot of authors. That is a good point. So why don't you tell folks a little bit more about what Indie Fantasy Fun is and kind of what you did to get it and how it helped you out?
Okay. I'm going to try. So from what I understand, it is organized by Zach Argyle and Bookworm Blues, his wife. I hope that's her right YouTube handle. I'm not 100% sure.
I think it's just Bookborn.
Oh, Bookborn. Okay.
Right.
And they you submit, and I think I was honestly really shocked because at the time of submitting, you only submit the first chapter. So it's only the first chapter of Sistah Samurai. And I'm like, I don't know. They'll know what this is at all. I'm crazy just going in with just the first chapter. So I was really surprised that I got anything, honestly.
That's funny. No, yeah. But you got it. And so what they generally have a pile of money that Zach Argyle and Bookborn, like, mostly, well, in the past it's pretty much been entirely them. This is like the third, help me out, Bo, third year, fourth year that they're doing it. But they in your instance, you got help from a different professional.
Yes.
But other, go ahead.
From what I understand, like at the time, a couple of professionals had volunteered their services to add it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is super cool. Otherwise, you get money to help you make the thing happen, because probably a lot of my audience already knows. But if you're not a deep in the indie book trenches, then yeah, there's a significant cost to getting a high quality book out there, between the cover design, the editing, maybe proofreading, and then if you want to do any sort of promotion at all, that's going to be on you, the indie author, also. Yep. Right. Oh yeah. Well, and book.
You're correct.
Sure. No, Zach and Bookborn. But Bookworm Blues, she donated her services the last year, maybe the last like 2 years. So like getting an edit from her was a possible thing that you could win from this, which was that's a nice thing. Big. Yep. We are not worthy. We are not worthy. That was a damn good chapter. Well, there you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if you are an indie author and you haven't heard of the Indie Fantasy Fund, you should go check it out. Every year, they just announced their winners for this year, and they kind of did things a little bit different this year. They were giving away bigger pools of money with the explicit intention of helping indie authors start their audiobook. That's another thing that is quite expensive to get a professional audiobook. Have you looked into that for Sistah Samurai?
Yes, I have looked into it, but I haven't.
Yeah, I haven't pulled the trigger. Sure.
Pulled the trigger on it, simply because, as I said, like I've just broken even on this book. So as far as I'm concerned, like, okay, I have enough to pay for another cover.
Yeah.
We'll see about an audiobook.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Yeah, like it's expensive. Yeah. Like, I'm just thinking about covers costs coming up. I'm like, but so cool. Tell me a little bit. So obviously, you're a Sistah Samurai. I love the title too, because it's kind of clear what you're getting. You know what I mean? Like Legends and Lattes was such a good cover and such a good title, especially with the subtitle of high fantasy with low stakes. Got it. You know what you're getting, and yours, I think you know what you're getting, which is it's part of the just brilliant packaging that you've done. But can you talk a little bit more about like what are some of the inspirations we know, like Afro Samurai, Sword of Kagan, Samurai Champloo, that sort of thing. How did you decide to mix it all together, and what to no major spoiler to say that the main character is a little on in the years, what made you want to do that? Which I love it, and you made it work so well and gave her such distinctive voice that I think works really well. But what were some of the inspirations that and made you want to make those decisions those ways?
I think one is just being a lover of fantasy books, and specifically Black fantasy. If you read a lot of fantasy by Black authors, you quickly realize that we still don't have a lot of older Black heroes in fantasy. And I wanted to make sure that they were there. Same with, there's also not a lot of Black fantasy that I feel is very fun, especially in the adult space. And, I wanted to make people laugh. I wanted, to bring light to the genre space.
I love the last line in chapter 1 again. Listen, if you don't want a spoiler for chapter 1, close your ears now. But it's chapter 1. But the main character is looking for they're kind of upset that they forgot their glasses, but then at the end she grabs her shades and she puts them on. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Forgot my glasses, but I got the shades. Yes, I do. You know why? Because I look like a bad motherfucker. Yes. It was
yes, yeah. And I just wanted to because I feel like, sometimes characters just aren't one dimensional. Sometimes they say things that they don't do, and they do things that they don't say, and there's just so much nuance there. And by the end of it, she didn't forget her classes at home.
Nice. Yeah. So I was trying to think like how spoilery we want to get. I will. We're gonna get like just a touch spoilery again. Like I haven't even finished it, so this isn't very spoilery. But one thing I was surprised at was in the book there are demons, which I think is awesome. But what made you kind of you could have gone so many directions with like kind of villains, right? What made you want to go that way?
Well, when you have an action heroine, you need to give them something to fight.
Of course.
So I definitely had it from that perspective, that I wanted to give her something to fight, and I could have given her people too. And there are human antagonists in the book, but there's this interesting thing where kind of demons are representative of other things, and there were just some kind of, because I don't know how far you are in the book, like some inspirations from Afro Samurai that I kind of twisted around and wanted to play with in this book. So I really wanted to do and also yokai or demons. They're a very common antagonist in Japanese anime as well. So I thought it'd be fun to also have my own version of what these demons would look like in this particular universe, and how they would manifest here.
I like it. Yeah. No, I mean, it gave it so much flavor. We've run into at least one demon, one that's very very close. Very yeah. We'll just leave it at that. And yeah, so there's so much flavor, and I love it. Yeah, your voice throughout was so well. I mean, again, I haven't finished, but still, like from whatever, so good, so consistent, so clear, such a strong character. How much of that did you just nail because you just had such a clear concept of this character versus really needed to be finessed through editing?
Well, one, because it's an inspiration, it's an homage to Afro Samurai, and that anime is voiced by Samuel L. Jackson. So I wanted a female version that could rise to that level. Two, I had published 2 other books beforehand, and they're very long, very long, chunky books, and I'm going to be honest, grammar is my weakness. I really do struggle with it. And I really do, pour money into assistance with it. So it is nice to be able to just be free and write the way that I speak, write the way that, people around me speak. So there is no line that I didn't put in here that I didn't hear a Black woman can say it in my head. So it definitely, and then there's also, because with Ebonics or African American vernacular English, there's a rhythm to it. There's a musicality to it, and that was also something that I really wanted to capture.
Yeah. It all worked, and I think it felt. I think I couldn't pull that off, obviously, right? But I think even kind of in your position, it would be easy to make missteps, and just make it seem clumsy, but you made it work so well. And I think it just because it just feels so authentic to the character,
Yeah,
but,
and I did have invited quite a few beta readers to come read it. And honestly, the biggest critic was my mom.
Oh yeah.
It was hilarious because I come from a very specific hood where I'm from, and she's like, this is very specifically where you're from, Tatiana, some of these isms. I was like, okay, let me take those out.
Oh, that's interesting. That's funny. So you did take some of those out, and to make it a little bit more kind of generic, and a little bit more broad.
A little bit more, yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Huh. Okay. All right. But that I could see. I mean, that seems like a reasonable choice. Reasonable choice. Um. So you mentioned too. This was not your first rodeo, right? You've
Yeah.
got other books published. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of what's been your writing journey so far? Just leave that very open ended like that.
So I published my first book in 2022, and as I mentioned, at that point, it was after the pandemic, and I had saved up all these, like I saved up quite a bit of money to pay off the rest of my student loans, but I was like, you know what? We just had COVID for 2 years. Had personal family losses, and I was like, I'm gonna just go. So I traveled for a year and I published my book. And it was very rewarding for me, even though it kind of kept me from doing a lot of things that a few other authors were able to do. For example, I couldn't walk into bookstores, or I couldn't have signed copies because I couldn't ship them out. I didn't have a permanent address. But it was it was a really good time. And within 2022, within my first year, I published my duology, which was Bones to the Wind and Dragon Your Bones.
Wait,
So,
wait, 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 wait. Hang on. Don't, let's give that a minute. Let's give that a minute. Let's
okay.
give it a little bit more space. There we go. All right. Bones of the
So the first one's Bones to the Wind, and the second one is Dragging Your Bones. And I had written all of this at the same time. So I had published the first one in March and the second one in December. And the next year I had published Sistah Samurai, which I had wrote, edited, had a beta read, the cover, all of that within a year. And yeah, it is kind of exhausting to like publish 3 books back to back like that.
Yeah.
But
This is a perfect segue into another question. What sort of made you want to start down this path of writing and publishing? I get the sense that you're someone that's probably been writing for a very long time, probably.
yes.
But was the idea, all right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to publish it? Was that sort of similar to the traveling post COVID, where like, after COVID, you're like, I'm going to do all the things I've been thinking about doing, damn it,
Yeah, and that decision definitely happened during COVID. Like I've always been writing, I always wanted to publish a book. But when COVID happened, you really kind of sit with yourself and you're like, well, what if you die tomorrow? Like that's a real question that I think a lot of people had to tackle with.
Yeah, you're damn sure not going to be like, well, it's a good thing I paid off my student loans, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was like, I would really regret having not ever published my stories. And so once I made that decision, I created a publishing company. I, worked and wrote my butt off for the years of COVID, and I got it out.
Woo-hoo. Nice,
Yeah.
nice. So like, yeah, it's my impression is, well, you hit the black in a shorter time frame with Sistah Samurai than the other ones. What do you kind of attribute? Like, it seems like Sistah Samurai has been just really, it's hit a note, right? And it's found its audience. And the other ones, you're clearly a great writer. I don't, but they haven't quite found the audience yet. So what do you kind of attribute that to?
I actually do contribute a lot to my first 2 books because my first 2 books were very successful in finding my target audience in regards to BIPOC readers, in regards to Black women and queer reviewers. They were the ones who picked up my book first.
Nice.
They were the ones who talked about my book first. The year that Bones to the Wind came out, there was over like 10 BIPOC reviewers. It was in their number 10 book they read of the year. So, so because like I had that core audience already, like I think they helped contribute to the lift and the visibility of this one. Nice. And then there's also, just the audience that this book brings, right? Like the cover is very intentional, that if Afro Samurai, you will look at it and be like, wait, is that like Afro Samurai? It's very intentional to bring those readers in. So yeah, I definitely think the first 2 boosted,
Yeah,
this
of
one, but it
course, of
also
course.
kind of like took off in ways that
Yeah,
I didn't imagine either. Like I had no idea I was gonna get such a such a response, honestly.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
No idea.
Pretty cool. I love the way that happens too, right? Or like, was it Christopher Rocchio? He's well into his Sun Eater series, but all of a sudden, like he's kind of the darling of a booktube, you know. Fun to see. Fun to see. Um, so yeah, you've written a few books. Um, what does your are you is your process still evolving, or have you sort of coalesced around one thing? I have like heard from other authors, like Michael R. Fletcher said on Wizards, Warriors, and Words, that like every project he does something different, and like part of me thinks, well, that's cool, and part of me makes my head spin. You know, what do you think?
For me, I'm definitely still figuring out my process. Like I have gotten to the space, to the headspace enough to say that, okay, I'm a good writer. But I feel now where my journey is, how do I make my writing process more effective? Because it took me 4 years to write the duology, and I don't want to have to spend 4 years to write another book. So it's how can I make my world building more effective? How can I write this more effective without spending so much time and spending so much drafts? I am optimistic and happy that with Sistah Samurai, it really was a what's in my head, put it down on the page type of project. It there wasn't a lot of detours with this book whatsoever.
Mm.
I finished my first draft of my next book, and I also feel very good about that as well. It very much was okay, what's in my head, and now I'm tackling draft two. So it's just right now for me, it's really refining my process.
Nice. That is an ongoing struggle for me as a new writer. So tell me, what's working for you these days? You know, what do you tell me?
So as you know, there's plotters and pantsers. I am 100% a pantser. I am a character driven reader.
Okay.
So I don't outline very much. I have like kind of touchstones, an idea of where I want to go. For example, with the duology, I knew what the ending was, and so I
Mm-hmm.
had to get there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
And so because of that, for example, the first draft is telling myself the story. It's what is happening, what is going to happen, and then the world building is very not set in stone. And like even the book I'm writing now, like there are characters that I'm like, okay, I want to change their names changed halfway through. Some don't exist like halfway through the book. So the
Mm-hmm.
second draft is very much for me making decisions like, okay, this is the name of this town. This is this is how this is going to be effective, because now I got the plot out the way. I know what occurs, so I'm not worried and thinking too hard about that now.
Yeah.
So that for me as a pantser, that's how it's working so far.
So like you don't necessarily know the plot. You maybe have an idea of like where things are going to end, but the characters are pretty like solid and cohesive for you in the well. I mean, some of them are, but
Yeah.
some of them aren't. I guess, huh?
Yeah, what the strength, especially about my duology, is that is kind of a story that I've sort of been working on and off since high school. So I'm very much know these characters.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, since I'm such a character driven writer, they still surprise me. Like for example,
Mm-hmm.
in this book, in this book I'm writing now, it's very similar to the first book. It's a hunt because it's sword and sorcery. They're hunting this massive creature, and halfway through the book, like the teams are supposed to change, like things are supposed to, a reversal, things are supposed to change up. But one character is like, no, no, and then it all happened in
Mm-hmm.
the inciting incident and things snowballed. And I'm just like, this was not supposed to happen. Like, stop.
What are you doing? Yeah.
What are you doing? But the character trumps all for me. So I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing. Let's go. Let's go. So now I'm glad I know where their shenanigans are going.
That's interesting. That's so. Yeah, I am aggressively a plotter. And like to the point where there was one story where I plotted it like too thoroughly, and it kind of took a little bit of the fun out of writing that project because like I'm sure you can imagine. Um, but like I have had, particularly on the work that I'm writing now, like significant like character rewrites, and like I have to write the character for a while. Well, I get with this character at least. I'm still figuring her out, you know. So, have you had that experience where you know there's a character where you're like, no, I don't know what I'm doing with this person. I know that they need to be here, but like I haven't, you know, truly figured out like all of their personality yet. And then as you go, you do figure that out.
Yeah, I that happens a lot with me with the side characters. Like usually the main characters come fully formed. Like Sistah Samurai, she was very fully formed. The
Sure.
main
I mean,
characters in this book, since I've kind of been with them for a while, they've been kind of really fully formed. It was the side characters that happen sometimes. There's
yeah.
one in particular that I feel like I struggled with the first draft, and then there was one scene at the end of the first draft that was just kind of a revelation. I'm like, that's what your motivations are. That's why you're acting this way. That's why you're doing this. Okay. Like I feel like for me that first draft really is just a very 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 detailed outline.
Yeah, sure. And I think like that seems to be you know, not uncommon with pantsers. So what like your second draft, when you go to write your second draft, like how you know, are you just like in there, you know, copy pasting everything around, or like also when you do that initial draft, do you keep like a list of things that you know you're going to need to change, or is it all here?
It's all here, and I shouldn't, because one of the things I did, so like my first two books, they are a lot of people enjoy it for the world building
Mm-hmm.
and are shocked to find out that I had none of it written down. Like after the books were done, like last Christmas, I went and read through those books and wrote down, finally did a story Bible for all this information,
Yeah.
because you know I was writing another book and I knew now I needed the information.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So I should write it down, but because the book isn't entirely finished, sometimes I change my mind about things.
sure.
So it's not until really the final draft that it's done that I'm like, okay, yeah, that's it. That's set in stone now. I can't go back and change it anymore.
Right. Yeah. This is how it's going to be. Right. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, but I do a lot of um, moving around, especially because the first draft is telling myself the information. There's a lot of, especially in regards to the info dumping part and things like that, where it's the information. The second
Mm-hmm.
part is like, okay, well, how can I say this? How can I show this? You know,
Yeah.
what chapter
Yeah.
can I show this? Where does this information go? Where I can, you know, say it in a bit more succinct manner.
Would you like so? Yeah. Clearly, there's like aggressive edits. Like, would you kind of someone I can't remember who like they write the first draft and then put it in a drawer and then start over. Like, you haven't done that craziness, have you?
Um, no, I don't do that craziness, but I do this weird thing to where like I'm looking at it, but I have to type all of it again. And I'm like, that's one of those things I'm trying to get more efficient by. I'm like, Tatiana, you don't have to type it all over 130 words over again. Just edit
Sure.
the paragraphs.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes it helps me think.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. One thing I've been experimenting with for a while now is like dictation.
Mhm.
Um and I just used in like November, I was trying like, okay, I'm gonna just like I'm not gonna do NaNoWriMo like kind of written. I'm traveling, it's not gonna work. But I'll use my phone and I'll use the embedded like recorder to kind of like talk through it all. And at the time I was like, and I'm like, I'm getting through this is great. But then I went and I like looked at the transcript and I'm like, this is unusable, you know? Which so I kind of had to be doing some of what you're talking about where you like just sort of retyping it all out when that's painful and I don't want to have to do it again, you know?
Yeah. And then as my family can attest, I'm always talking out loud to myself about
Yeah, yeah. Are you having conversations with the characters, or what is it? What is your talking out loud sound like?
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, so just going through, here's the plot, and I want this culture to be specifically in regards to, they're a very academic culture, so how can I show that? Like, what's the world building will look like? How can I do this? What will the characters say? It's like, I'm bad at talking to myself. People think I have someone else in the room, and I'm like, no, it's just me and my stories.
Just yeah, yeah. Just all my imaginary friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, Dragon Dictation has been a lot better. The thing about Dragon Dictation is that it can reasonably do punctuation. When I use the voice recorder, like the native voice recorder on my phone, if I say like open quote so and so, comma, close quote, so and so said, period, it doesn't do it right, but Dragon does it way better. So that's, I mean, one of the, yeah, like my you mentioned world building as one thing that you have to kind of go back in and fix. Everything is something I have to go back and fix. But like my first drafts are so dialogue heavy, but if I'm gonna like have it not even have the right punctuation, be such of a focus and not have the right punctuation. Like just annoying,
Yeah, to be fair, my first drafts are very dialogue heavy too. I think
really?
that's what I naturally lean towards.
Mm.
It is funny because some readers will say, "Oh yeah, you're writing very cinematic. You can definitely see the scenery," and that's something was a skill that I've learned, over time, because I know that it's a problem. So I actually have a draft where I go in and specifically focus on like the scenery, the senses, what's going on, like what's around. Like that is a whole draft in and of itself.
That's so funny because like I'm in a very similar position, but when I kind of finish that first draft, like the first things I do, like when I'm done, I go through and I look at like scenery and setting, right, and I look at within that dialogue, am I including body beats? Am I and doing that well? And then am I including in the story interiority in an effective way? Because that's what's unique to novels that separates it from other, like, movies don't do interiority in the same way, and lastly, like metaphors and similes, because sometimes I'm so focused on like the plot and then like maybe like hopefully some quippy things between the dialogue that I'm not thinking necessarily of like, how do I make this shit poetic,
Yeah, that's my very last focus on prose. A run through on prose is my very last draft.
Yeah, nice. Briefly, Daniel, yeah, I hear you that you're saying you haven't found a dictation that works well, but I asked on Twitter about dictation for writing, and somebody tagged someone else, and they suggested a book like that. I think it's just called How to Dictate Your Novel, and I went and I grabbed it, and it definitely was recommending Dragon. There's also on the phone I use Dragon Anywhere, which it's Dragon but for the phone. But it's supposed to get better and better as you use it, especially the desktop one. That's like it's the gold standard for dictation. But even then, they really kind of stress that like this isn't a silver bullet. This is a tool in the tool belt, and it has real limitations. Even though you can sort of like train it how to properly type like fictional names, it might just be easier. I have a character in my work in progress named Poey, Poey. He's actually based on a dude that I used to play video games with, and that was his handle in video games. But the dictation never gets that right. Never. So I'm not gonna have it be Pooey all the time. No. So I just started calling him Peter when I'm dictating, and then I can just do a find and replace. It definitely gets Peter right.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. Do you have any like kind of tips like that you've learned along the way that you're like, you know what, like while I'm drafting, I'm just gonna do it this way, and it'll make I'll be able to fix it later, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Like I definitely have not experimented with dictation yet, but in regards to I'll fix it, I'm definitely a person who, like put a comma here, like figure this out later. Figure this out later. As I said, like, delete this character when you come back. I think, just especially that first draft, just have fun with it, like worry about the small things in the next draft, later. Like, don't let it keep you from finishing.
Right. So because you do that as you're drafting, when you come back and do that second edit, part of me thinks if I was doing quite that well, I'm kind of trying to like build a list, and then I saw some like advice where you can prioritize the list after in terms of like things that require like the biggest rewrites. You do those first, and then you work through the list to like the easier things last, because the big rewrites are going to be the things that might change other stuff, and you don't want to be like, oh, I wrote this great setting for like a scene that's not even there anymore, right?
Yeah, that does make sense. What was very helpful for me is when I started using Scrivener, especially within the first and second draft, because when you skip through chapters and you skip between chapters, it keeps your place. So it's made it much easier to kind of skip back and forth as needed. And it's not to the third draft that I put it into Microsoft Word, where I'm reading it much more linearly and trying to see how it flows more linearly. But the first and second, that program allows me to skip back and forth much easier to kind of do all of that scramble.
That's really interesting. What prompts you to put it into Word on the third draft rather than just continuing to work with Scrivener?
Because, a book is read in a linear manner. So I need to make sure I know how it reads in a linear manner.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Okay. I do Google Docs, and it's only because like I meet every week with a writing group, and and I'd like to say we critique, but well, that's true, but they rip apart my shit in terrible ways, but then it's better.
Google Docs is hard for fantasy writers because there's a certain word count limit, and it's just.
No, you know what? I do a different doc for every chapter, and like that way, yeah, because you're absolutely right. Yeah, you get to a certain point, it's like Google Docs, like I'm not gonna open that. Fuck you, Okay. So I love talking process. It's really interesting. What it sounds like you're going through like multiple different drafts. That's part of your process. You talk a little bit more about what that looks like, or things that you've refined in your own editing process over time.
Kind of world building, because it took me for the duology. The world building took me a long time to kind of nail down, and so now that I kind of understand what I need better. So, for example, even before I wrote the first draft, I sat down and did like a timeline of history of, with believe it or not, those two books had no dates. There were no dates at all in those first two books. And I needed to finally sit down and be like, this happened this year. This happened the next year.
Sure.
And for example, between the first draft, there's this one character. He is like the 99th heir to the throne, which makes ridiculous sense if you understand how airships work historically. And so like I had to create a political system for that to make sense. And because after writing the book, I was like, okay, so this is important. This has relevance on the plot. I need to sit down and figure out all of his 98 family members. But, after writing the first draft, it helps me figure out what I need to do and kind of save time on not doing the things I don't need to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. I was just looking at like some advice about as a new writer, especially writing faster, and the importance of writing faster in like, not only is it good for business, but also, as people that are relatively new compared to someone like Rob J. Hayes with 20 books out, the way that we're going to get better is just to write more books, right? So the faster we can do it, the faster then we're getting better. And they were very much talking about like the first draft, just bang it out, just go, and then you'll be able to see what's working and what's not,
Yeah.
Yeah. and then what's important too, right? And then you'll be like, oh, now I do need to figure out 90 people in this family, and suddenly,
because I definitely didn't want to at first.
right, right. All of a sudden, you have like a whole, Targaryen family tree, and cousins. It's this whole thing.
I have it up in Canva right now to reference.
Nice. So let's kind of shift a little, but not too far. I know that you also love, open world role playing games, right?
Yeah.
Which, hell yeah. How do you like what? Yeah. How do you keep yourself from just only like spending time playing games and instead, work on the stories? What's your discipline for like, making sure that you're doing the hard work? Because I mean, nobody who's written a novel has been like, yeah, the whole thing's easy the whole way through.
Yeah. And I do have to say, like, I played a lot more video games prior to becoming a published author. And I still have video games that I use to relax. I think right now I'm going through the most recent Assassin's Creed, the one that's kind of an homage to the very first one, the one in Baghdad. So I've been playing through that one, and like I don't get to play as much as I want to, and sometimes I use it as like that carrot. That
yeah.
carrot,
you get your 2,000 words, you could play a game, Tatiana, right?
Exactly. I mean,
yeah.
Man, like there's so many games I haven't played and I really want to. The problem is the type of games that I love to play. Like, look, I love paying for like $60, $70 a pop, and then like spending hundreds of hours in this game. Take me 2 years to beat this game.
Right. My thing is like generally when like the games that I play a lot of are multiplayer games that I'll play with friends and like my brother, right? And then I'm like justifying it with myself. I'm like, well, I'm not just sticking around on it. I'm socializing with my brother, and that's important, So I am like deeply addicted to Helldivers 2 right now. I don't know if you've heard of that game, but like, yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem.
Yeah, no, I'm very much an introvert. I'm very much let me play my game, and I don't want anyone else to ruin it. Leave me alone. Let me go play my dragons in Skyrim and leave me alone.
Leave me alone. That's funny. That's pretty good. I appreciate that though. Yeah. I like the idea of using it as a carrot, though. That's pretty smart. Do you tend to, like kind of going back to process? I've seen so many times in terms of like writing faster, people suggest like keeping a word count log as you're drafting, and you can kind of make it, gamify it that way and like try to improve. And I often like that conceptually, but the place where it falls apart for me is when you finish that first draft and then you're editing. And there's nothing like that anymore,
So my first time, I actually did that for the first time in this book, in this draft. I never had logged how much I was writing or what my word count was beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
But like you see all these authors on Twitter, they're like, we did this day, we did this day. So it's like, oh, okay, well, let me try let's try and log my word count. And it did actually help me learn a lot about myself, because before then I couldn't tell you what my average word count was for the day. Like I couldn't tell you what it was. And right now when I'm not working for the day, I can average 5,000 word count a day. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that was a number I could reasonably do. But because I can average that, I was like, okay, now I have something I know what I'm capable of. And so now with the second draft, what I do is in a way to gamify it, I do it by chapters. So not word count, but chapters. So I'll do a percentage. So it's like, oh, okay, I'm 2% in now. I'm 4% in. I'm 10% in. So I'll keep my percentage by what chapter I'm in the story.
Damn. 5,000 a day? What?
Yeah. That's when I don't have work.
Still, like, oof. Wow. I'm impressed.
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, getting through, for example, the first couple of chapters in a book is a little bit different when you're further in, because when you're further in, it's kind of like you're gliding.
Yeah.
You know?
That's fair. And yeah, I mean, and that doesn't include kind of the time that you had to spend building your world building Bible, right? Right.
Yeah. That's outside of that.
That's what's up. And yeah, I like that of gamifying the editing that way. The one like that. So that thing that I was watching, I was talking about writing quickly, and it suggested that as you're doing that fast draft, you keep like a list of things that you know you're going to have to go back and fix, and then when you're all done, you can go to it and prioritize it by like the difficulty of these things to fix and the major rewrites you do first. And I really liked that too, that concept, because I think I'm going to adopt that, and I kind of have done that, but not as a. I'm happy if I were at 1K a day. Jerusha, what's up? Thanks for hanging out. But I totally agree with you.
1K a day is good. It's progress.
Right. Yeah. Listen, I just got out of a rut by writing like 320 words in the whole day, but I was like, you know what? It was more than 0. I'm gonna take it as a W, you know?
Yes, sometimes like a paragraph is a success.
Right. So anyway, this thing, like, yeah, I've been kind of keeping a doc of like edits that I know I need to do, but I'm gonna put it into a spreadsheet and I'll prioritize it. But I think that will kind of help me sort of gamify the editing process. And what I really like about that is if you're doing the hard things first, and as you're going through that list, then it's going to get easier and easier and faster as you're going through. And I'm like, ooh, okay, all right, this is going to be good for me, right?
Yeah, that's a good way of tackling it. I know, like, even because I don't write it down, I have like a general idea. For example, in the first draft, I know mentally that up about the 50% mark, it's pretty smooth. It's after that I need to tighten. So I have an idea of like where the parts I need to tighten and kind of delete, and I know what scenes I need to add. And I don't do it. I don't know, for me, I try not to do it out of order because I'm very, very focused on character arc and character development. And I want to make sure that flows right. And sometimes when I'm writing out of order, it's like, oh, wait, no, that character wouldn't say this at this time of the story. You have to keep up where all these characters are mentally.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. So that like the work I was working on, not the current one, but I was working on another thing earlier that's like currently on the back burner. But that one I was very much writing like, this sounds fun right now. This sounds fun right now. And that like was fun right then, but I don't know if that was a great strategy long term, you know? But that makes total sense. But
I think, like I feel like it's the process. It's figuring out your strategy because it's definitely going to be different for everyone.
Right.
And, hopefully we all have great books.
Right. Do you have a favorite craft book? Like, so, a book that's on writing,
I have read craft books, but I don't. And I don't simply because I subvert a lot of expectations, and also I find plots boring. Like like when you get to when you get to those standard plots, you know what's going to happen. And I get bored. Like I personally get bored, and I'm just like, now we're gonna do something. We're not gonna
yeah.
Do this.
Character's like, we're doing something else, and you're like, yes, we are. Yeah.
So you like I feel like readers do find a lot of maybe like different plot things that they're not used to because I've read so many books, and I don't like doing what I've read before.
Yeah. That's fair. Cool. I feel like it was a fairly good place to wrap things up, Tatiana. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I do want to
great talk about everything.
Right? No, I've had a blast. I want to mention again, and especially since Jerusha's here, I'm going to drop this into the chat. WriteHiveCon.org, guys. So Tatiana's going to be a panelist. I moderated, and I also got to do one of the guest of honor interviews, which was very flattering and cool.
Ooh, awesome. He taught
Zamel.
Zemo Akhtar.
Yes, yeah.
Gods.
It was at the tip of my tongue, but I was concerned I was going to pronounce it wrong. Anyway, what about her landing her book in a book? Oh yeah. About a question about your book in a book box.
Yes, that was very fortuitous. So when Sistah Samurai released, within that month, it also released as a book box, and which is really cool because we rarely get book boxes. I know that I certainly can afford to do a book box because I see a lot of authors do book boxes for like pre-order incentives or as launch strategy, but I did talk to an author friend of mine who had done the same thing, who was very gracious about sharing her numbers. I considered, us having a very similar audience in the same size. And she kind of broke even. And so it made me really think about, could I make my money back? And at the end, I decided not to do a book box. And so it was very fortunate that I was approached for one, and it was it was a Black woman-owned company, and they fully support indie authors, and they do it quarterly, so I think only 4 times a year. And yeah, they were very awesome. Like one of the women, she had lived in Japan, she was stationed there, so she definitely like already knew, and the co-partner, she was also a big anime fan. So I was in very good hands. I definitely trusted them to, like do this book box in a very cool way.
Nice. So I'm not sure that I'm 100% familiar with a book box. Nice that you got this opportunity. I'm kind of gathering what it is, but like if anyone hasn't fully heard of like what a book box is, can you kind of explain for me?
Sure. So a book box is it includes the book, and it also includes different swag items.
Okay.
So maybe like at least with Sistah Samurai, it came with candles, it came with bookmarks, it even came with tea. Nice. And just different items that's usually related to the book. And a lot of people, the way that authors would oftentimes use them is for specifically in the launch part and the pre-order campaign. So for to buy a book box with the book and all of its goodies, and it's usually like a limited type of thing, and it runs out. So it's very for like promotional purposes.
Yeah.
And, the social media influencers, they do like to prefer to open things that look nice and pretty.
Yeah. That's cool. I've actually got like something like that from an author, but I just I guess I hadn't heard it by that name. So and then yours was like organized by a company that just does this,
Yes, correct.
That's pretty cool.
Yes, they're called the Fifth House Collective.
Yeah, okay. All right. I love how many, like, I remember kind of flirting with indie publishing like 12 years ago, and it was so nascent, so undeveloped, and but these days things like that exist, things like Wraith Market exist, Podium Audio exist. Like, it's amazing and cool how much like kind of different businesses have grown up around this, and that offer genuinely good and cool and services to. It's very neat.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
Right. Anyway, well,
yeah, we could talk about the whole history of indie publishing.
Right. RightHiveCon.org, guys, go check it out. We're going to be there this weekend. It's going to be lots of fun. And yeah, Tatiana, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you chatting with me tonight, and I appreciate again you being gracious with the rescheduling and offering to do that on a day that it was a difficult day for me and that sort of thing. So thank you, and I'm loving Sistah Samurai and looking forward to finishing it.
Thank you. I really enjoyed talking with you today. Like, I don't know, I love talking writing and books. It's great.
Right. So thank you all. Wait. Before that, actually, I wanted to thank everyone. But before you guys leave, Tatiana, where can people find and follow you online, please?
Yes. You can find me at my website, TatianaObey.com. And then you can follow me on social media. I'm everywhere at Obey the Author.
Great handle. All right, now the rest of you, thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate it. Again, if you guys are on Twitter, if you do want to go give me that retweet, that's going to help more folks see the show. If you're on YouTube, really appreciate that like and subscribe. Also, there should be a link to follow me on Patreon. I'm just treating it like a free newsletter right now. That'll probably change at some point, especially as I'm getting some of my own work out there. But anyway, yeah. Thank you all for being here. If no one's told you today, you're an absolute legend.